Yo, what's going on? It's Terrell, Hall of Fame, D-Line, TBKC, and all that other good shh. It's early, I'm tired, I gotta get to the airport. But I did make this video. A lot of people have been asking about pedigrees, and I'm gonna tell you, the thing about reading a pedigree is it's not as simple as you think. And one of the reasons it's not simple in the American bully community is because of the lies. So many people have been dishonest about what they do with the dogs, whether it's, hanging papers, which for those that don't know what hanging papers is, that's just using one dog and saying that his pedigree is something else. Or totally, hanging a breed, and that's adding in a different breed under the false pretenses that it's another dog once again of the same breed. It's made it damn near impossible to properly read pedigrees. Now, as you read the pedigrees, there's small things that you'll pick up on, like champion and, DNA profile, that's the DNA P that you see on there. Those things are, that's the title work. But outside of that, it's very, very hard to be able to read any of this paperwork. Now, I tell you this, man. If you're going to do a breeding, the reading of the pedigree is more research. And, it's going to take a little bit of time, but I would do a couple dogs a day if I were you, or if you have time to sit down and go through all the dogs. But research every dog in your dog's pedigree at least 3 generations back, and start trying to find out, the different health issues that they had, the strong qualities that they possessed, how long they lived, things like their movement, their temperament. If you can get this information, and sometimes you can get this information, we are blessed to have these 101 million boards, whether it's Facebook or anywhere else. So having these different things, it allows us to ask a bunch of questions. And typically you'll start asking questions and you'll start getting answers because people love to be critical. So they'll tell you everything that's wrong, and then the fans of the dog will tell you everything that they believe was right and the best qualities. And you start adding these qualities up. One of the things I like to do is pretty much it is analytical, is that I like to have a pros and the cons sheet on a breeding. So if I take the male, and as I do his research, if say for instance something like bad hips comes up, and and it says, okay, his dad's hips weren't great. Then it says his grandfather's hips weren't great. That's 2 dogs, out of the 3 generations that has bad hips. So I have to write that down because that's there. And with it being him, it's a little more alarming. But then it might be something, else with like skin issues that comes up with a couple other dogs in the pedigrees. And, something else with another one. Well, those are the cons, and I write those cons down, and I write how many times it's come up on each side. And then I also do the same thing on the pros, multiple dogs, or the majority of these dogs, whether let's say in 3 generations, let's say 6 of the dogs live to be over 10 years old. That's definitely a good thing. That's showing longevity on on that side. So we mark down the dogs that lived a longer life. That's a positive thing. We write down the things like great structure, great movement. We write all these positive attributes down. And at the end, you'll have a long list. And I know this sounds like a lot of work, but this is what breeding is. You have a long list. You'll have a long list of pros, and you'll have a long list of cons. And you'll be able to, hopefully not a long list of cons, but you'll be able to compare the two to each other and decide if this breeding is going to work. I will tell you this, when you're reading these pedigrees and you start to see certain things, understand that genetics are doubling up on or making stronger, either the good or the bad in most cases. And if you see something like I spoke of hip issues, if you see something like a hip issue come up multiple times in your pedigree, you might want to not consider doing this breeding, or you definitely want to switch up and try to minimize that issue, hip issues, heart issues, the more severe issues that can threaten the way of life. I do consider some things less serious, like skin irritations and allergies is definitely a lesser issue than heart murmurs. I think when you start talking about heart murmurs, that's, you know, that's life or death situation. When you know, and believe it or not, hips, you know, it's a life or death situation because I've seen many dogs that their hips have degenerated at a very young age, and I'm talking about 18 months, to the point where the dog can't walk. And then, you know, most owners have to make the most natural decision, which would be to put the dog down before they're 2 years old. I've seen this happen many a times. This is why it's the key for you to go into your pedigrees and study your pedigrees and understand the science of putting together a dog. It's not just taking what you like and taking the hype and saying, oh no, it's going to be a great dog. This is why we have so many failures in the American bully breeds, because most people just go off of what they like and don't do the proper research to have a good understanding that, hey, yes, I like these things, but at the same time, we can do better. And that's where it comes into manipulating the good genes to be better and eliminating the bad genes so that we don't have to deal with them. This is the process of breeding, and this is a process that we have to be very, 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 you know, staunch on, and really, you know, really go hard in doing these things. If we don't do these things, we'll continue to have dogs that end up in dog pounds or end up dying young, or, you know, just basic failures as breeders. But if we do start to build these pedigrees in a reasonable fashion to understand what the pros and the cons are on both sides of the pedigree, you'll make a better dog. It's just that simple. This is, you know, this is genetics, biology, wherever you want to go. Good plus good, you know, is going to equal good in 99% of the cases. And once you add bad, bad is going to be bad, you know. There's the theory that you can change a dog's whole makeup by adding something else good to it is in one sense correct, but in the other sense, you do not totally eliminate issues that are with these dogs. This is why studying of pedigrees is so important, because, you know, it's just like us with people. I'm sure that if you looked at yourself and you looked hard enough, you can find features and things about yourself that comes from your grandparents, you know. And it's just that simple. I've talked about this before, but like my grandfather, you know, was not the biggest of men, but he was stocky. You know, he's 5'7" guy, but the dude has 17-inch arms, you know. Generations later, I'm closer to 6 foot, but I have 20-inch arms, you know, which are not easy to build, but for me, they're easy to build. And it's funny, my dad has the same thing. My dad has very large arms, not quite as big as mine, but it's genetics, you know what I mean? It's a lot of genetics there. At the same time, you know, in my family, we have a history of diabetes, you know, on my mother's side of the family. Several of her brothers had diabetes. So, you know, I have to look at that as a factor and pay closer attention to, was it just, I'll call it their strand of blood because they were my mom's half brothers, or was it, you know, was it effective with her whole entire gene pool? And, you know, we pay close attention to diabetes in our family because of that. And it's no different with dogs. You know, when you get the questions, when you go to the doctor about your health profile, this is what we're supposed to do in reading pedigrees on the health side. But on the flip side, it's the physical features too. If you want a big head and a nice big head and a certain look to the head, well, the majority of the dogs in your pedigree needs to match up to what your desires are for head, for feet, for movement, for temperament. Temperament is another big thing. Don't think that that just goes away. If you start doing research on the dogs in the pedigree and it says that most of these dogs were vicious, you're probably gonna have some vicious puppies, you know. But it's just constant studying and getting the history, you know, good and bad, of the dogs in the pedigree. And as the TBKC goes along, we have a plan to try to make that a little bit easier and try to have profiles on the dogs and different things that'll, you know, help one way or the other to maybe help people make more responsible decisions with the breedings that they're going to do, if they're going to do breedings, you know. But hopefully this long drawn out video gave you some information and some thought process on how to study, you know, not just looking at the paper of your pedigree, but to actually go behind it and do the research to find out what your dogs is about. Like I say, I got to catch a plane, man. God bless all y'all. If you're going through anything, man, don't give up. God loves you. Put your faith where it needs to be. Much love. Peace.